There is something most men completely misunderstand about words. Not what they say, but the specific emotional charge hidden inside them. 3 simple words in the right moment can stay inside a woman's mind long after you've left. Not because they're poetic, because they trigger something deep in her limbic system, the part of her brain that remembers feeling, not logic. And once that switch is flipped, she doesn't forget you easily. And that's exactly why most men never realize what actually made her think about them at 2 a.m. And it's not your fault. Nobody ever explained that language has emotional weight like this. Most men were taught to impress, to talk more, to explain themselves. But attraction doesn't respond to volume. It responds to precision, to timing, to emotional alignment you were never shown. That gap is why so many men feel unseen. That's something I've studied for years. My name is Luna John, and female psychology isn't theory for me. It's patterns I've seen repeat in real-life conversations, in silence, in the smallest reactions women don't even realize they're giving away again and again. Today, I'll show you 3 specific words that activate a woman's attention in a way most men never notice. Not manipulation, recognition. The first one feels simple, almost too simple to matter. But it bypasses her conscious filters and lands straight into emotional memory. The second changes how she perceives your presence around you. And the third, that one lingers long after the conversation ends, and almost nobody uses it correctly. The last one is where everything shifts. The first word is what I call the resonance trigger. It's not about meaning, it's about emotional mirroring. Words that sound like internal truth rather than external attempt. When you say it, her nervous system doesn't analyze it. It relaxes because it feels familiar, like something she has already felt but never had named. This is where oxytocin quietly rises. Trust begins before attraction even becomes conscious. Imagine you're sitting with her, and instead of trying to impress, you say a grounded, simple word that matches the emotion in the room. She pauses, looks at you differently, not because you did more, but because you did less, with precision. This taps into evolutionary psychology. Women are wired to scan for emotional safety faster than logic. The limbic system responds to tone and emotional consistency, not persuasion, not performance. That's why this word works. It removes resistance instead of trying to overcome it. And when resistance drops, curiosity enters. That's the opening most men never create. She may not even understand why she suddenly feels calmer around you, but she will feel it in her body. A shift in parasympathetic nervous system activation, a quiet settling, like her guard doesn't need to stay up. And that shift is what makes her remember you later, without knowing why. But that's only the first word, and honestly, it's the weakest of the 3. Because the second one changes how she positions you in her mind completely, not as a stranger, not as just another man, but as someone emotionally registered. And when that happens, her attention starts returning to you automatically, even when you're not present. Most men never realize this shift is happening in real time. They think she's ignoring them, when in reality, her brain is processing them differently. But the second word, that's where control begins to disappear. And once that door opens, the third word decides everything. And most men are never ready for what comes after that at all. And the second word is where everything shifts from attention to attachment. This is what I call the identity anchor. It sounds simple when you hear it, almost underwhelming. But when it lands in the right emotional moment, it doesn't just register as language, it registers as meaning. She starts associating you with a version of herself she likes being around, not the mask she shows everyone, the real version underneath. Most men talk at women. They try to impress, explain, fill silence. But you start reflecting her identity back to her in a way that feels accurate, not exaggerated, not performative, just precise. And when that happens, something subtle shifts in her perception. She begins to lean in emotionally without realizing it. Her brain starts tagging you as relevant, not just socially, but internally. That's dopamine beginning to pair with recognition. The reward system lights up because she feels seen, not pursued. Picture this, you're talking to her, casual setting, nothing dramatic. You drop that word in a calm, grounded way. No pressure in your tone, no chasing energy. And she pauses for a split second longer than normal. That pause matters. Because in that moment, her mind is updating who you are to her. And most men completely miss this. They think attraction is about saying more, but attraction is actually about saying less, with accuracy. If this is hitting different, tap the like button. It helps this reach men who genuinely need it. Because the third word is where things stop being conscious at all. This is what I call the temporal echo trigger. And this is where neuroscience quietly steps in. When a woman experiences emotional contrast, calm, curiosity, slight tension, and comfort all in a short span, her hippocampus strengthens memory encoding. That means she doesn't just remember what you said, she remembers how she felt around you, and feeling always wins over logic in recall. The third word works because it creates what I call emotional replay. It doesn't hit her in the moment the strongest, it hits her later, when she's alone, when her nervous system is quiet. That's when dopamine reactivates the memory trace without external stimulus. So she's sitting there at night, phone down, mind wandering, and suddenly she replays you, not because she chose to, but because her brain pulled the memory forward automatically. Most men think attraction is loud. It isn't. It's residual. And this is where everything becomes dangerous in a subtle way. Because once that replay starts, she starts assigning meaning to it. She asks herself questions she didn't ask in the moment. Why did that feel different? Why do I keep thinking about that conversation? But this is nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to what comes next. Because the third word isn't just about memory, it's about emotional ownership of the moment. And when used incorrectly, it flips the entire dynamic without you even noticing. And now we reach the third word. But calling it just a word almost feels wrong, because what it really is a psychological switch. I call it the emotional lock. This is the moment where everything you've built, attention, recognition, memory, compresses into something she can't easily release. Not because she's forced, but because her own mind keeps returning to it. Here's the truth most men never understand. Women don't get attached to effort. They get attached to emotional imprinting. The nervous system remembers contrast, calm followed by intensity, safety followed by curiosity, familiarity followed by mystery. That pattern, it stays. And this third word only works when everything before it is already in place, when her limbic system is already engaged, when oxytocin has already started to rise, when her attention is no longer casual, but directional. Most men ruin this moment by overdoing it. Too many words, too much explaining, too much chasing the reaction. But you don't push. You place it softly, almost like it wasn't meant to matter. But it does. And when she hears it, something subtle happens in her expression first. A micro pause, a slight softening of the eyes. That's not imagination. That's her brain updating emotional relevance in real time. And later, that's when it hits her hardest. She's not thinking about the conversation. She's replaying the feeling, the parasympathetic shift, the quiet comfort mixed with curiosity she couldn't name in the moment. That's dopamine and memory consolidation working together in the background. Picture it clearly. She's alone, phone down, no distractions, and suddenly you come back into her mind. Not as a thought she invited, but as a feeling that returns on its own. That's the emotional lock doing its work. And in that state, she starts attaching meaning to it. She wonders why it feels different with you, why it didn't feel like normal conversation, why it stayed. That's the dangerous part most men never realize. Because once a woman starts assigning meaning to how she felt around you, she starts creating emotional continuity in her mind. And continuity is what turns moments into attachment. This is exactly what I see in my work. In years of observing how small linguistic cues shape attraction far more than men realize. And this is where your identity changes. Most men will go their entire lives never noticing these micro shifts. They'll think they lost her for no reason, or that she just wasn't interested. But you now see the structure underneath it. And once you see it, you don't unsee it, because there is one final layer to all of this. One refinement that determines whether the emotional lock strengthens or disappears completely, and almost nobody talks about it. Because once you understand it, you realize how fragile attraction really is. No, the final layer isn't another word. It never was. And this is where most men misunderstand everything they've heard so far. You were never actually being shown 3 words alone. You were being shown how silence holds them. The final refinement is what I call the after sound effect. And once you understand it, you realize something uncomfortable. Attraction doesn't live in the word itself. It lives in what happens after. When a woman hears something that lands emotionally, her brain doesn't just store the meaning. It stores the space around it, the pause, the tone, the absence of chasing. This is where dopamine prediction error becomes powerful. Her brain expected more stimulation, but you gave restraint. And that imbalance creates memory weight. Most men destroy this by over-explaining or filling silence, but you hold it, you let the moment breathe, and her nervous system completes the meaning. And that is why she thinks about you later. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't ruin. Picture this. She is scrolling her phone at night, everything is quiet, and suddenly her mind replays you. Not the conversation, the feeling that is silent retention, and it is what separates men who are remembered from men who are replaced. Most men go their entire lives thinking attraction is built through effort, but it is built through emotional precision. This is exactly what I see in my work again and again in how women respond to subtle psychological timing. And I am Luna John. And this is the pattern most men never get to see. Now let's walk through this one more time, step by step. First, you don't chase meaning, you align with emotional state. Second, you anchor identity, not performance. Third, you introduce controlled emotional contrast. Fourth, you allow silence to complete the imprint. Most men rush all of this and erase the effect before it forms. But you are learning to let moments settle. Most men will never understand why she stopped replying or why she kept thinking about someone who said so little, but now you see it clearly. If this opens something in you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, I am revealing what women notice in the first 30 seconds of meeting a man you do not want to miss. That comment lock below, I read every single one. You are not chasing words. You are shaping the silence they remember. And that is the difference between being heard and being felt. Because when you speak with emotional precision, you are no longer competing for attention. You are shaping memory. Memory is not logical, it is state dependent. She will not remember your sentences. She will remember her nervous system. And that is why timing matters more than content. A perfectly timed silence will always outperform a perfect explanation. Most men never learn this. So they overtalk, over-explain, over-lose. But you don't need more words, you need better placement. And when you understand that attraction becomes less about effort and more about calibration, you stop trying to be chosen and start becoming remembered. And that is where everything changes, not in what you say, but in what she cannot forget. So take this with you, not as manipulation, but as awareness of how human emotion actually works. And if you use it correctly, you will notice something quiet but powerful. You are no longer invisible in the way you used to be.